All right, so next up in the list, we have Harper, who is a Firlbog, I think is how you say that. Yeah, that one's a hard one to say. But we have a pretty tall, bluish, we'll call him an avatar, right? Creature that is a druid. So Harper, this one is for you. We're going to kind of cover your character sheet and kind of summarize your character. You have one of the more complex classes that you can play. You're a spellcaster and a shapeshifter. Yeah, you got a lot of different options that you can choose during your turn. And not all of them are just Thorn Whip, right? You should give that one up. You're not hitting anything with it. But yeah, so let's go ahead. We're going to get started because this one's going to be a long one, just a forewarning. Harper, let me just say, it's probably a really good idea, especially for you, to kind of review your character sheet before we start playing. Get everything top of mind and refresh your memory of all the different options that you can choose during your turn in combat, or even just as a player playing the game when we're in role-playing mode or exploration mode. All right, so let's go ahead. We'll get into it, and we'll look at your character sheet. So first, how do you open your character sheet? There's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can click on the journal and then click on your character, and that will open your character sheet, which is probably going to be the best way for you because you're going to have so many different character sheet options for you as we get into this. But the token itself, this is another way to open your character sheet, is if you right click on your token, you'll have an option that says open character. You'll see a bunch of other options here that I have that you wouldn't have as a player. But look for that open character, and that's another way to open your character sheet. Okay, so those are two ways to open your character sheet. Additionally, if you held down, and I don't know what it is on a Mac, and I know you use a Mac, Alt, whatever the equivalent is on a Mac for Alt. If you hold down Alt and double click, it will also open your character sheet. Okay, so with the character sheet open, we're going to kind of review your character and the different things you can do with your character. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make this area here. These are the attacks and spell casting you can do. I'm going to make this a little bit more easy for you to digest by getting rid of the spells. So Healing Spirit, Moonbeam, Heat Metal, Ice Knife, Cure Wounds, Healing Word, and Thorn Whip. I will leave Thorn Whip here, actually. Nope, I said I was getting rid of spells. I'll keep cantrips, though. That's what I'll do. Let me just look over here and look at Thorn Whip Guidance. We'll add guidance to this too. No, we won't. Okay, so we'll go over all the different spells as well. So on your turn, you can take your club and bash somebody's head in with your club, or you can cast Thorn Whip by hitting either one of these two words here. So if I hit Thorn Whip and we go over to the chat window here, and you hit Thorn Whip. You know, I don't know how you can't do it. I got a 21 to hit, and I did 5 piercing damage. And then, you know, you can click here on to show the spell description to find out, you know, you can actually pull that creature in closer to you and so on and so forth. All right, let me just... Sorry, my daughter. All right, so with that, you just kind of click here and here to cast those two spells. Well, not even to cast, but to roll those dice for your attacks on Thorn Whip or Club. All right, now we'll move over to this area here. This is your tool proficiencies. You have Herbalism Kit and the Flute. Sorry. All right, so Herbalism Kit. This is a way for you to be able to identify different... Here, let me just read it. So Xanathar's Guide to Everything is another rule book. You guys don't have this. I have this one. But so I'll read to you what Herbalism Kit does, just so you know that you have the ability to do these things while we're playing the game. All right, so H, Herbalism Kit. Proficiency with Herbalism Kit allows you to identify plants and safely collect their useful elements. You can do things like investigation or medicine checks, nature and survival, identify plants. You can find plants. You can identify a poison, all kinds of different things, as long as it's based on an herbalism thing. The Herbalism Kit also gives you a unique opportunity. You can actually craft healing potions. All right. So you'd have to take some time to do that, and it's going to cost some money. But a potion of healing is going to take you 1 day to create 1 potion of downtime, and it's going to cost 25 gold pieces, which is half of what they're actually worth. And then a greater healing would take you a week or 5 days, a work week, and cost 100 gold. A superior healing would take you 3 weeks and cost 1,000 gold. And supreme healing would take you 4 weeks and cost you 10,000 gold. All right, so obviously this is way late game stuff, but you, during downtime things, like if you're in a town and there's not a lot going on and you're doing a lot of role playing, you can spend a day during that to create a potion of healing. And every day you do this, you can create more and more potions of healing for yourselves. And it's going to cost 25 gold each time you do it. All right, so keep that in mind. And they are worth 50 gold pieces, so you might be able to create some pretty cool healing potions and sell them to vendors if you don't need them. They'll probably be more worth you consuming them yourselves to keep you guys selves alive. And then the flute, you know how to play the flute, which indicates you are familiar with the technique used to play it. You also have the knowledge of some songs commonly performed with that instrument. You can also compose a tune. You can identify a tune or improvise a tune. All right. And then your ability to put on a good show is improved if you incorporate your flute. Okay. So that's that for you on your tool proficiencies. So this isn't a lot of combat oriented stuff here that we're talking about, but do keep in mind that you have those abilities. All right. So let's move over to the right side of your, character sheet here, and we have armor proficiency. So as a druid, you cannot use shields or wear armor that are made of metal. They have to be leather or wood or something like that. Okay. Druidic, you know the Druidic language. It's a secret language of the druids. You can speak it, you can write it, you can leave hidden messages, and if you leave a hidden message or you find a hidden message, people might be able to understand that that's a Druidic message, but they wouldn't be able to decipher it without using magic. You can decipher it freely and willingly. Okay, so you know the Druidic language. All right, ritual casting. This you don't have any right now, but if you were to have a spell that could be cast as a ritual, you don't need to expend a spell slot to cast it. It just takes 10 minutes longer than a normal casting time to cast it. Okay. An example of this would be detect magic, which you do know, but more of because it's a racial trait, not because you're casting that spell. Okay. We'll get into that. We'll get into spells here shortly. Firlbog magic, once per day or once per rest, I think it is. Short or long rest. Yep. You can actually cast disguise self or detect magic. So you can do that once per day. You just cast it without needing material components or, you know, all that. You don't need to cast it as a ritual. You just cast it. It doesn't cost a spell slot or anything like that. Okay, and you can do that once per day. You can detect magic or disguise self, and we'll get into those spell descriptions when we move over to the spells. Hidden step. As a bonus action, you can actually turn invisible until the start of your next turn. Okay, so that might be useful in combat when you're getting low on health. You can just go into invisibility mode, and nobody can attack you and for that round, unless of course you make an attack against somebody else or take any action, then you would become visible again. Okay, so you can do that once per short rest, I believe, or long rest. So you can now also, and on top of being able to cast disguise self or detect magic, you can also become invisible on your turn. Okay. Powerful build. Basically, you can pick things up and put them down really well. All right. And you count as one size larger for that. Don't worry about that. I'll keep that in mind. But you're pretty strong. Remember that. Speech of the belly and beast. Speech of the belly. Speech of beast and leaf. You basically have a limited ability to communicate with plants and animals. You won't understand them, but they will understand you in a limited fashion. So you run across the bear in the woods, you might be able to talk that bear into not attacking you and to move on, and you mean it no harm, and you're just going about your day, right? And then you wouldn't have to have that encounter of killing that bear, right? Wander, or maybe you might think a plant. Why would I want to talk to a plant? Let's say there's some poisonous mushrooms, right? And if you get near them, they're gonna go. You might be able to tell the poisonous mushrooms you don't mean it any harm, and it won't go. You know, whatever. I don't know. Use your imagination on how to talk to plants and animals. The Wanderer, because you're an outlander, you have excellent memory for maps and geography and the general layout of things like dungeons and, you know, what have you. You also have the ability to find food and fresh water for yourself and up to 5 other people each day. And you don't have to worry about going hungry, basically. Wild shape, here we go. You ready? This is the bread and butter of your character. And you get to do this twice per rest. Short or long rest, and you can transform into a beast. It does have to have beast. You can't like transform into a dragon, right? Because they're not a beast. Okay, so any beast, like animals, right, that you would find in the wilderness, you can do that up to a certain level. They have to have, there are certain restrictions here, and we're going to go over those as well. And you basically, when you look at your character sheet, you have your strength, dexterity, and constitution. Those are your physical abilities. Those are replaced by the beast itself, but you maintain your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. So any skill or ability check that requires intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, you would use Harper's character sheet, not the beast's. Unless the beast's is higher, then I'll allow you to use the beast. Okay. And you can stay in that form equal to half your level, rounded down, so you're level 3. So you can stay in that beast form for 1 hour. If you drop down to 0 hit points while in beast form, you don't die. You come back into Harper form, and you maintain the hit points you had prior to going into beast form. So imagine you had full hit points. In this case, you have 24 hit points max, right? So you have 24 hit points. You beast shape into a tiger. The tiger has 5 hit points left and takes 10 points of damage. 5 away from the tiger, you come back into Harper form, 5 away from you. So the damage does carry over to you. But remember, you get to do this twice. You're back into a tiger form again with full hit points of that tiger. So you have the most hit points of any character in D&D, right? Like druids, especially Circle the Moon druids, have the most hit points of any character in D&D. Well, I guess that any player character that you can play in D&D. Okay. All right, combat wild shape. This is an addition to your wild shape because you took Circle of the Moon instead of Circle of the Land or any of the other circles that are in Xanathar's Guide. You took Circle of the Moon, which means now instead of it as an action to change shapes into a beast, you can do it as a bonus action. And additionally, you can use your spell slots to heal yourself. So if you're getting low and you're a tiger, let's say you're down to half hit points, you can spend spell slots to roll d8s to heal yourself. And it's the spell slot, the number of d8s is equal to the number of spell slots expended. So if you had expended a second level spell, you would do 2d8. If you did a second level and a first level spell, you would do 3d8. Okay, and then you would roll those die and you would heal yourself that many die of hit points. And then beast shape allows, it's the same thing as wild shape. It replaces wild shape, and it's a little bit more. You can change shapes into creatures that are a little bit more deadly, basically. Other than that, I think the rules are the same. Kind of go through this. Yeah, right. So let's talk about why we're talking about beast shape. What shapes can you turn into? It's literally anything you can think of that your character would have seen in real life, right? So there are, in the monster manual, we do have dinosaurs that you could turn into a T-Rex, right? But you've never seen a T-Rex, so you can't turn into a T-Rex. right? So if, as the DM, you encounter a T-Rex, boom, now you have the ability, if you're of the appropriate level, to turn into a T-Rex. So what's some of these restrictions on the beasts that you can turn into? Let's talk about that for a second. First of all, I've done you a favor and kind of created you a list of possible beasts that you might want to turn into. It's not the only beast you can turn into. If you find something that you want to turn into, by all means, go for it. Okay, let me know and we'll pull in that character sheet. But if you come into the journal tab, which is this button right here, you got your chat and then you have your journal over here. If you click on journal, you'll see here that you have, you won't see this option here, but you'll see under here, Harper's Wild Shapes. If you open that folder, you'll see there's two folders below it, Utility and CR1 and below. So challenge rating 1, that's how challenging is the beast. It's almost like it's the level, okay? What's the beast's level? If you can turn into a beast of level 1 or lower. So there's quarter, half, 3/4, and 1, okay? Under Utility, I kind of gave you some creatures that you might want to turn into that would perform some utility. So like the giant fire beetle, it's not really, you're not going to come into combat with it. It only has 4 hit points, right? But it does have this ability to shine bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. So you could literally turn into a torch for your teammates, right? And for yourself as well, because you also have blind sight for 30 feet, which means you don't need eyeballs to be able to see. You can still see within anything within 30 feet of you. Okay. So that's kind of why I put the giant fire beetle in there. Riding horse, you can turn into a riding horse. Should be pretty self-explanatory why you'd want to do that. It's because Brittany doesn't want to walk anymore, right? But you know, maybe it'll make traveling a little easier for you guys. If you find a cart, but there's no horse to attach to it, you can become that horse to attach to it. It doesn't have to be a horse. If you want to turn into an ox or, you know, a cow or something like that, that you want to turn into, any beast of burden that you want to turn into to pull that cart, you could do that. But I gave you that riding horse here. So more of a utility, obviously not a combat thing. You only have 13 hit points and you don't do a lot of damage on your hooves attack. All right, the badger, the only reason I include the badger is because it has, there it is, burrow speed. So now you can burrow underground without a challenge rating, which means you can, you know, burrow. Maybe you want to get into somebody's house and unlock a door for them because, you know, Chapaco's failing or he doesn't have any thieves tools. You can burrow underneath the house, come up, come back into Harper mode, unlock the door, and you're in the house. Something like that. You know, use your imagination and creativity on why you would think maybe turning into a badger and burrowing underground would be useful in that particular circumstance. And then a rat. Rat's pretty good for mapping out a dungeon before you guys even get into the dungeon. You know, how uncommon would it be to see a rat in a dungeon? Probably very common, right? So maybe you could go unnoticed. But be careful. You only have 1 hit point, and if, let's say it's a dungeon full of goblins, and the goblin's like, "Ooh, a rat, let's eat it," and they kill it, then you turn into Harper. Now you're in the middle of a dungeon all by yourself with no help, right? And then the player characters, if they knew somehow that you were in trouble, have to fight all the way in to get to you. So use that sparingly and cautiously, okay? If you even use it. But you do have the option. And as far as the utility, any creature you can think of and why you'd want to do it, let me know, and then we'll pull in that character sheet. There are some restrictions. You cannot have a creature that has a swimming speed or a flying speed until you get to a certain level. As you level up, those things will unlock, and I'll add some examples in there for you as well. Now, the CR1s and below, anytime you look at, like, we'll take the fire beetle, you'll see that everybody has a challenge. This is a challenge 0, right? So if it's a challenge 2, it's too strong for you to be able to turn into. But a challenge 1 and below, you can turn into. So I've included some examples here, And each one is they're all good and would be great in combat, some for utility purposes as well. So let's look at the Tiger. For instance, the Tiger has 37 hit points, which is already more than you have. And remember, when it drops down to 0, you still have your 24 hit points. You don't die. But it also has a +3 to perception, a +6 to stealth. It has dark vision of 60 feet. And it has keen smell. You would have advantage on perception checks that rely on smell. You have the pounce ability. So if you were to run 20 feet before you do an attack, you can pounce on your creature and maybe even knock them prone. And remember, if you're doing melee attacks on a prone creature, you get advantage. You can bite that creature or claw at that creature. All right, so that's your Tiger. The Dire Wolf is another option. You have 37 hit points, just like the Tiger. You have perception and stealth. You have keen hearing and smell. So you would have advantage on hearing or smell perception checks. You also have tactics. So as long as there's an ally within 50 feet of the creature that you're trying to attack, you get... wait, hold on. Yeah, within 5 feet of you or the creature you're attacking, you get advantage on that as long as your ally is not incapacitated. And you can take the bite attack, which does about 10 damage on average. All right, that's that. Now remember, you're going to take the strength, dex, and con, but the intelligence, wisdom, and charisma are your score when you do this. So Dire Wolf is really cool because you get advantage on a lot of attacks. Tiger is really cool. It's situational if you can pounce, if you have the room to pounce. Brown Bear has 34 hit points, so a little less. But also another thing we should point out is the AC. So you're pretty easy to hit as a Brown Bear. The Dire Wolf has an AC of 14, and the Tiger has an AC of 12, right? So Dire Wolf seems to be the best option so far mechanically, because it's the hardest to hit. It has a good pool of hit points, and you get advantage on all of your attacks with an ally within 5 feet of you. The Brown Bear is cool because it does a multi-attack though. So it makes 2 attacks, one with its bite and one with its claws. So you get to do both of these. I'm going to pause that. All right, so with the distraction aside, we'll continue where we left off. So the Brown Bear has multi-attack, so you can bite and claw at the same time. All right, but easier to hit. So that's the trade-off there. Giant Hyena. Hyena can rampage. When it's reduced to 0 hit points, instead of immediately reverting back to Harper, you can take a bonus action to move up half its speed and make a bite attack. So you get 1 more attack if you were to drop to 0 hit points. You have 45, so it's the highest hit points out of all of them with an appropriate 12 AC. So kind of it's great if you're just like kind of tanking and you're taking all the hit points. That would be kind of cool. You don't do a ton of damage. You only get 1 attack. You don't have advantage on anything, but you get that one extra attack afterwards. So Giant Toad, you cannot turn into because it has a swim speed. So I will hide that one from your character sheet because you can't do that one yet. All right, and then Giant Spider. You guys actually fought one of these before. When we did that one shot. You had some giant spiders. Now you can be that giant spider. You have spider climb, so you can climb difficult surfaces, including upside down on ceilings without the need of an ability check. Really kind of cool. Web sense, if you have some webs in the area, you can sense the exact location of another creature within the web. And Web Walker, you can ignore movement restrictions caused by webbing. It all kind of makes sense. You have an AC of 14. You don't have a ton of hit points, only 26 hit points, which is a little bit more than what you have right now. But with all these extra abilities, it's kind of nice. On top of that, you have the Bite, where you can bite one creature, and it does 7 hit points plus another 9 of poison damage. and or half as much on a successful save. If the poison damage reduces to the creature to 0 hit points, the target is stable but poisoned for 1 hour, even after regaining hit points. And it is paralyzed while it's poisoned in this way. Kind of thematic there. And then you can also fling some web. And it says recharge 5 or 6. So what that means is at the start of your turn, you're going to roll a 1d6 on a 5 or a 6. If you previously cast web, you can cast it again. And you do this at the start of each one of your turns. Like, so if you cast web and you roll a d6 and you go 3, you can't cast web that turn. You can take a bite out of somebody. But web is basically, it's a ranged attack where they're going to have to do a strength check, or they're going to be surrounded in webbing. And it is vulnerable to fire damage. So you could spit web onto a creature, and then somebody who has firebolt can cast firebolt on the webbing, igniting the webbing and doing fire damage to the target as well. So you could work as a team in that sense there. So pretty cool giant spider. And now you know what they can do to you as well, right? So you, as a druid, you would have that knowledge and know what all these creatures that you can turn into, what their weaknesses are, what their strengths are, and all that stuff. So those are some examples of what you can do in your wild shapes. And it's probably just easier to choose one of those, unless you find a specific creature that you want to transform, a beast that you want to transform into. Let me know. We'll put the character sheet in there. Almost anything you can think of is in here. And if not, I can create a character sheet for it. So that's good. Now, I know this is a longer one. We're at 26 minutes already. We haven't even talked about your spells. So let's breeze through the spells. Again, I'm going to emphasize, before we start playing that, like on the day that we're going to play D&D, go through and review all of your spells, review all the things that we just talked about. So when you're sitting down at the table, you have a better idea of what things you can do on your turn. Okay. All right. So let's go over to spells. So we're going to click on the spells over here. We're going to look at all the different spells we have, starting with the cantrips. Guidance. Any creature that has to do if you cast guidance on a creature, they get to add a D4 on any ability check of its choice. Okay, so this is for ability checks, not attack rolls. Okay, so that would be, if we look at your core, any of these or skill checks. So if somebody's going to, let's say Japako is going to unlock a treasure chest with his thieves tools, you can cast guidance on him and he gets to add a D4 to his ability check to see if he successfully unlocks it. Could make the difference between a success and a failure. That 1 point, if he even rolls a 1 on a D4, could change that failure into a success. And it is a cantrip, which means there's no mana associated with it, right? So you can just cast it at will, however long you want. It lasts for up to 1 minute, and you do have to concentrate on it though during that minute. So if you have a spell that you're currently concentrating on and you cast guidance, that spell that you were concentrating on before is fizzled out. Okay. And incidentally, to cast a spell, I'll move over to the chat window over here, and let me move my face over here too. If you cast it by clicking on the word, the chat bubble puts the spell description here. Okay. If you click on it, now it kind of looks the same because it's not an attack. Let's look at Thorn Whip. So Thorn Whip, if I click on the words, you get the attack frame, right? So you rolled an 8 to hit. Man, that really does suck. And you get, if you were to hit, it's a 4 for piercing. Okay. If you click on the chat bubble, it gives you the spell's description of Thorn Whip. All right. And if you click on the eye, it expands the description so you can read it before you cast it. Right. So moving on from cantrips, meaning like free magic, you can cast as many times as you wish. Let's talk about your special skills. So because of Firbolg magic, you have Detect Magic and Disguise Self that you can use once per rest without expending a spell slot. So you don't expend a spell slot to cast these. All right. So Detect Magic is, if we look at, if you hit the eye, you can kind of read it right here. Within 30 feet, you sense the magic and you can determine its school of magic. whether it's aberration or illusion. I can't remember all the different schools, right? Divination, got that one because it's right here. You know, so you can detect that. So imagine a situation where you found a really cool looking sword. You don't know if it's a magic sword or not. You can cast detect magic to determine if that sword or that object or the area is magical. And anything that is magical would be glowing, and it'll be obvious to you that there's magic in the area. So that's a really good utility spell there. Disguise Self is a way for you to change your appearance through magic without having to put on a wig and put makeup on or anything like that. You literally will change the appearance. It is truly illusionary though. So if you're a really fat man and you want to make yourself look thin, you truly are fat. And if somebody goes to touch you, they're touching you before they even get to the illusion of that. Or vice versa. If you're thin and you make yourself fat, the fatness, or make yourself a hat, your hand's going to go through it. And somebody with close inspection will know that it's an illusion. But if you're trying to pass yourself off as maybe, if you know what Glassstaff looks like, right? You can disguise self to make yourself look like Glassstaff and tell the red brands to do something like leave this place now. And they're going to believe you because they look like you, unless they, for some reason, they fail an insight check or they succeed an insight check and they inspect a little closer. It's not a guaranteed success. Okay. And you don't know what Glassstaff looks like, so you can't do that. But so you can disguise yourself through magic. And because normally you can go 1 foot shorter or taller, but for you, I think it's 3 foot taller or 3 foot shorter, because it's specific for being a Firbolg. Now, you do not need to cast this using a spell slot. I want to make sure you understand that. You don't have to, if you're going to cast Detect Magic or Disguise Self, you're not going to reduce the number here. You're going to come over to Core and say Firbolg Magic down 1. Okay, so now you can't cast either one of those until you take your rest. Okay. All right, moving down to your first level. So anything under here is you have 4 spell slots at first level, and you can cast any one of these 4 times per rest. And you can see that right here. You've cast 2 already, so you have 2 left, and you can choose any one of these that you can cast. Fairy Fire is really nice because it makes objects and creatures glow with this fake fairy fire and the color of your choice. And what's great about it is any attack against a creature that is glowing with fairy fire has advantage against it, right? So it makes it easier for your comrades to hit and yourself to hit. Just a keynote on spells: you cannot cast spells while in beast form. However, you can cast a spell, transform into a beast, and continue to concentrate on a spell like Fairy Fire. So an example would be you cast Fairy Fire on the area, all the creatures in the area, if they fail their dexterity saving throw, will have glowy fire on them. As a bonus action, you turn into a dire wolf, and then you go up and attack them with advantage, right? Because they're glowing. Healing Word heals your allies. Cure Wounds heals your allies. Ice Knife is really cool. You shoot like the shard of ice at somebody. Whether you hit or miss, it'll explode, doing cold damage to anybody in that area. Kind of neat. Protection from poison should make sense. I believe it imposes disadvantage, or you get advantage on saving throws against being poisoned. And if they are poisoned, you neutralize the poison. Okay. Pass Without Trace makes people a little bit more sneakier. So, and this is a concentration spell as well. And I believe it's up to an hour. And each creature you choose within 30 feet of you, including yourself, gets a +10 to their dex saving throw. And I think there's a limitation on how many people, but I guess not. So you get a +10 to your dex saving or stealth saving throws, or stealth checks. Sorry. Heat Metal is really cool. Remember, as a druid, you don't like metal, so you're able to. All right, my dog. Enough, Mango. you're able to take metal and heat it up, make it glowing red hot. So imagine a creature's holding a sword, and you heat that up so it's red hot. They have to drop it, right? And if they can't drop it, like suit of armor that you make red hot, they start taking damage. And you can use your bonus action every turn to cause that damage to happen again. Moonbeam's really cool. Has a situational utility to it as well. But basically, you shine moonlight down in a particular radius, and it does damage to any creature that starts its turn in there, or at the time that, or moves into it for the first time, will start taking damage. On top of that, any shape-shifting creature, if you suspect that there's a creature that's not really that creature, it's like a shapeshifter, if they fail the saving throw, have to revert to their actual form. So if it was for you, like, for example, if somebody were to cast Moonbeam on you and you were in the direwolf form and you failed the saving throw, you would have to revert back to Harper. So that's kind of cool with a Moonbeam. Did you know you have the dark vision spell? You've been struggling to see in the dark. Now it's a lot easier for Japako to cast the light cantrip, or for you guys to light a torch. But in the event that you don't have any of those, you can cast dark vision on yourself and give yourself dark vision. And it's not a concentration spell, and it lasts for 8 hours, which is pretty nice. And then Healing Spirit is kind of like a imagine like you got this like translucent stag walks into the area, and any of your friendly creatures that come in close to it or come into its space will do a certain number of healing up to a certain point, and then when all the hit points that it can give out is delved out, it runs away. Okay, or at the if you lose concentration on it, or after a minute. Okay, so that's your spells. I know that's a lot, man. Like, I get it. Like, you have chosen one of the more difficult classes to do. You have so many options on your turn, and I think you're getting a little overwhelmed. You're just like, Thorn Whip. Like, it's just easier to Thorn Whip, right? So take that moment before each session and just review everything that we've just gone through. And as you start to level up and you get more and more options, review all of these before the sessions, just so it comes up in top of mind and you're able to do that. All right, I hope this was helpful and informative, and if not, at least a good waste of time, right? So I will see everyone else in the next video when we go over Scriven's, I think is next. Yeah, he's the last one. So we're going to go over Scriven's character sheet. Although Scriven hasn't been playing lately, I think it'll be a good idea to kind of just review what we're all missing out on, I guess. So the wizard of the party, we'll kind of go through his. So, all right, I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, you're a trooper. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video.